you indeed for this invitation, and thank you for the possibility to talk after George, who is also a colleague of mine at the National University of Public Service in Budapest. And I think that some of our ideas overlap. My topic today, well, I talk here as a political philosopher, basically. So my things are political, but on the conceptual level. And my interest is in the limits of trust. How one can identify the limits and how one should make sense of it. And why is that important for me? Just a moment to explain this opening painting, which is by a turn of the century Hungarian painter, Csontváry Tivadar, Kostka Tivadar, who claimed this is a Roman bridge. And that's already a point why one can think about. Because we are here in Mostar, which is in Bosnia-Herzegovina, and of course famous for its war damages when they have actually bombed it and had to be reconstructed in order to connect the two sides. In any case, I use this painting because I'm interested in cities, and Mostar is a city over here in Bosnia and Herzegovina, but my point is that it's a European city. A European city with a minaret and a mosque, still a European city. So it's something that is quite interesting culturally as well, a connection of cultures, and still a unit which is important for me. Why? Because I'm in a project of writing political philosophy of the European city. I claim that there is a political philosophy of the European city, and I also claim that you can draw this ideal type. You can conceptualize it. You can identify it, and that's my project. And how does it connect to trust? My argument is that most modern political philosophy deals with politics on the level of the state, so on the nation's level, and sometimes even supranational levels. But they disregard the local and the regional levels, and my interest is in that sphere. Why? Because I think that politics is about the interpersonal. It's not something that is, something far away. It should be understood that it's a face-to-face relationship. And the face-to-face society, community, per se, is the polis, in Europe at least. And I try to understand how it works and try to define it. And I think that the basic issues here are self-rule, that the cities have considerable local autonomy, not a full one most of the time, but at least a certain amount of autonomy. On the other hand, they are confined. They have got a certain territory for their inhabitants, but that territory was limited. It had its boundary, it had its walls. In fact, stone walls, as we see it around. So I think that the city presents us with a self-ruling, self-governing community, which is confined to a certain territory, and therefore they have to cooperate, they have to find harmony within themselves, in spite of the conflicts that will naturally arise in those communities. So the keywords are concord, conflict, and commerce. But that's about my greater project. And now, in this context, I want to show why the city is more important for me than the nation. And the argument is that this is because trust has certain limits. It does not overarch nations, empires, continents, whatever. They are confined to certain territories. And the way I do it is a conceptual analysis. Here I provide the etymological background of the concept, where I will call attention to the fact that in the 1200s it was called something like religious faith. So trust had that religious dimension, and then later on it took up the meaning that we associate with it these days. Then I looked up the Encyclopedia of Philosophy provided by Stanford University, which has a very detailed account of trust. I took out 3 points of that summary. One is that trust is important, but it's also dangerous. It's very interesting to see that there is this contradiction that you need it, but you need something that is dangerous for you. So you have to be very careful with it. Why is it important? Because otherwise you will not be able to get into relationships with others, and that's the point where we are close to each other with George's more sociological approach. The other side of it is that trust involves risk, because you have to rely on people that you cannot directly control. So you risk, you bet on it, and it will either work or not. So one should keep in mind this risk element. The second point is that trust is, well, in my analysis, I consider it as an interpersonal affair, so I'm not talking about a community, but 2 persons. X trusts Y. So he has got an attitude of having trust towards the other. Why? Because he claims that, or supposes that Y is trustworthy. If Y is not trustworthy, it was not rational for X to have this attitude of trust. So there are 2 conditions that X has got the attitude, and Y has got the property which opens up that attitude, the possibility of that attitude. And the third point of the Stanford summary is a list of the requirements of trust. And I think it's interesting again to call attention to vulnerability. As long as you trust someone, you will be vulnerable towards him or her. So you open up yourself, and that way you, in a way, invite attacks against you. So in a way, it's not the balanced relationship that we were talking to, because Y did not yet say that, well, I also trust you. He or she might look like a trustworthy individual, but still did not claim to trust the other one. It's me who trust you, and it's me who offer the trust, the attitude of being, of thinking that you are trustworthy. And also there is this optimistic dimension to it, that you have to be in a way open-minded and hope for a good scenario in your relationships. And finally, I looked at the legal dictionary. What does it offer for us about trust? And there we have got an institution called trust, which is created by a truster in order to take care of the created trust for a third person, the beneficiary. So there is this is a triangle relationship. There is someone who creates a trust, which is managed by the trustee in order to benefit a third person. And that's again very tricky, that there is this institution by which a bridge is built between 3 persons, connecting them. And this is again an unbalanced relationship. The beneficiary does not do anything for the truster to get what can be gained from that. Anyway, that's it. And well, one can then go on and look at political philosophers who use the concept of this legal definition of trust and try to explain a political community as a trust created by the founding fathers, the trusters, and the present generation of politicians are the trustees who try to defend and safeguard that political community for the beneficiaries, i.e. for the future generations. But that's not the point would like to say. This is more important. Maybe that's the most important slide of my short presentations. That's a Wittgensteinian point. It is that if you claim that there is something like trust, i.e. that there is a possibility to trust someone, then you need to say that there is a possibility to distrust someone. So there is this bipolarity of the term. Trust, therefore, is confined. You cannot trust everyone, because as long as you trust everyone, trust becomes a meaningless term. It does not differentiate from any other phenomenon. So you create the concept of trust. With that, you create confinement for that trust, and you create the realm of distrust as well. So the question is, where are those limits? Where are the borders of trust? And my claim is, well, and this way, in fact, what you create is the opposition between those whom you trust and those whom you distrust. So the friend and the enemy is already there. The political concept of those who are with you and those who are against you are created. That's the Schmittian understanding of it. And why is that important? Because I think that you have to think in political terms in a very narrow circle of confinement for trust in order to let it work properly. I.e. all philosophies which try to reach out and take trust to be, you know, possible for millions of people or whatever, will miss the point. It's not possible to have that scenario. Why? Because your natural capacities are limited for trust. You are confined in that. And what you do is, in fact, you have a natural hierarchy of acquaintances and people whom you don't know, but of whom you have got some knowledge. You try to position them in a hierarchy of concentric circles. For example, if we are here together, we say that we have got a circle of academicians working together. In this sense, we have got a certain amount of trust in each other because we know each other and we know what to expect from each other. But that's limited. We trust our wife or husband perhaps a bit more than each other, and we trust each other more than, I don't know, people in the mood. In any way, so that's my point, that I want to say that trust needs its confinements, its limits. But then you can have certain techniques how to widen it up. Law is there, institutions are there, social authority, prestige is there to try to push the limits further and further. And of course, today the problem arises what to do with the non-personal kinds of communication, like the media, whether the media can communicate your trust or whether it's not possible. And I think that there is a possibility of trust in a social media environment as well. So I don't exclude it from the possibilities, but again I think that it's important to try to find the limits, the borders, the walls for your comfort zone within that environment as well. Otherwise, again, the term becomes meaningless. Whoever comes and meets you in the digital world, then you cannot simply trust him or her, because then the term itself has no meaning. So you have to select the group, the comfort zone, the intimacy, which is crucial, I think. And that's the challenge, I think, for the present day generations, how to try to build up trust within that environment. And I have got certain doubts how far it can work, but I'm sure that there are techniques to tackle the issue. But one should always remember that this is a risky business. You take a dangerous path as soon as you trust others, and you naturally have to consider breakdowns of trust. That's a crucial experience of the 20th century, and I think that we should keep it in mind. That's what I had to offer today, and I'm looking forward to your comments and questions.